Fashion revolution is a consumer's movement to change not just corporates but industry as a whole. These activities of social actors such as consumer activities is a goal of altering existing social arrangement by corporates. So it's based on Marxist critical theory, and activists call for consumers to boycott companies. So it affects corporates and it alters businesses. So successful social changes is accompanied by the power of social movement activities to mobilize sufficient resources such as boycott consumers. Consumers who are in conflict with corporates, they have a power and influence over corporates, for example, boycotting behaviors. So what will you do as a CSO or CEO of the company of consumer movement? Okay, the next paradigm is radical imagination paradigm. It is a collective process through shared experience, language, and stories, ideas, and art of consumers and companies. It ultimately leads to common possibility and shared understanding. So it's quite collaborative or cooperative process. For example, there are organic food. There are companies and consumers who want to consume or who want to produce organic food. So this kind of process of consumers and corporates makes changes in industry. Similar examples are fair trade food and also maybe meat substitute as well. There are many companies who are on meat substitute business, and also there are consumers who want meat substitutes. So this is a shared process between company and consumer. What about the third paradigm? The strategy coalition paradigm, which means that these corporations and consumer collective, they work together. They form a strategic coalitions to achieve sustainability goal. So a range of market players form alliance, coalitions that come to affect social changes. In this view, the companies and consumers are friends. Are there historical examples? Yes. For example, there is anti-slavery movement. Anti-slavery movement in history. As you see, this is a product having "Am I not a woman?" and sisters with the slavery image on the pottery. So consumer buy this product and also company produce this product to form a strategic alliance to achieve social goal. You see in the free produce movement, East India sugar not made by slaves. The major industries use slavery to produce products. But some companies and some consumers form an alliance, coalitions to make changes. These days, we see this kind of movement by BTS for sustainability and also FAN, the army. They form coalitions to reach a significant amount to support Black Lives Matter. Let me introduce my research. My research shows that in this forming coalition process, what matters is people's perception that does my contribution make meaningful changes? For example, if BTS and Army raise $100 billion, then maybe my $10 donation, $100 donation does not make any meaningful changes. Then maybe consumers will not participate. So in this collective effort or coalition, important perception is the perceived behavior impact, which means that their behavior can make a difference in environmental sustainability. You see here the European Union, United States, and China, in all different countries, they do have different levels of this perception. Their behavior matters. And in the right side, you see different group of countries which shows different level of perceptions that their behavior matters. So what if company do their best, government do their best, but what if consumers, citizens do not feel their behavior does not count? It deters consumers' participation on sustainability. Through my research, I showed that actually support from the corporates deters participation from the consumers. In this graph, I showed that unconditional giving from the company deters participation. You see this just $4 willingness to donate amount. But if the matching amount or companies giving away is matched conditionally, not unconditionally, but conditionally, then it actually prompts consumers to donate. So you see here almost $9 of willingness to donate. So what is the difference? It's about conditionality, because when we work together, when corporate, government, civil organizations work together, maybe my effort, this little me, does not seem that really matter to achieve sustainability. Yes, it is important to make collective efforts. Corporates work hard, consumer work hard, government work hard. But in this process, we need to be cautious that if we make each individual feel that, oh, they are doing their best, it's not my responsibility. My consumption does not really count. My pro-environmental behavior does not make any changes. Then it makes consumers to leave, but make collective efforts conditionally. For example, corporates do their part. If consumers do something, then it makes consumers to do things. So far, we have focused on consumer sovereignty scenario. But what about marketing strategy scenario? What happens when consumers are subjected to the manipulation of companies? In this view, have their agendas and produce what they want, not forced by consumers. And they persuade consumers or even manipulate. So the prospective consumers is just one of the consideration of firm in making consumers related decisions. This reflects reality to a certain degree. What happens if corporates seek sustainability? The research shows that when the company has high expertise perception, engaging in sustainability does not make any difference. But when companies are perceived to have low expertise, then the company's sustainability efforts actually increase the perceived performance of the product. It has halo effect. Sustainability efforts also, it has positive impact on even unrelated product performance evaluations. This means a lot for companies who are not prominent in the market. So sustainability issue probably make their business more successful. So let's think about the basic paradigm how consumers perceive a firm. As a human, we have tendency to see things based on these two criteria, which is warmth and competence. You see this table, low competence, high competence, and high warmth and low warmth. When a person has a high warmth and high competence, then it evokes people's emotion of pride and admiration. But if both warmth and competence low, then evokes consumers' emotion of disgust and contempt. What if high warmth and low competence? Then it evokes pity and sympathy. What about low warmth and high competence? It evokes envy and jealous. As a company or as a brand, you may want to be perceived as admired or respected company. That's why a lot of companies are taking efforts on high competence, and at the same time they want to be seen as a warm company. It's a perceptual map of brand. So a lot of times companies do their best to be admired by consumers, not contempt or not sympathy. So this is the basic social perceptual map as a consumer perceived brand or company. So the sustainability effort is highly related on this. The company wants to push sustainability issue to be seen as a warm company with their efforts on performance and competence at the same time. In this regard, sustainability initiative may be effective to enhance warmth perception of the company. Another important theory is the attribution theory. It explains that only when people do see that the positive behavior of the actor has genuine motive, then it leads to positive reactions. But the same behavior can be based on self-seeking motive, or maybe it is forced by stakeholder. For example, government forced business to do SDG, or maybe self-seeking motive, the company wants to sell more products through a sustainability initiative. Then it does not affect consumers' positive attitudes or behavior toward the company. So we need to remember that while companies do their part to heighten the warmth perception through sustainability, consumers, as a receiver of the information, they also go through attribution process to understand why the company is doing this. Then if the motive is not genuine, then there is no positive impact, maybe more negative impact. Because consumers do have persuasion knowledge. So while the company use some tactic, it undergo a fundamental change of meaning process through consumer suspicion and skepticism surrounding the motives of the firm. For example, I'm suspicious about promotion tactics used in this sustainability promotion, or I'm skeptical about promotion tactic used in this marketing. The company is trying to manipulate me. In these sustainability efforts, it is clear that the firm is trying to influence my behavior. This kind of attribution have impact on business outcomes. So while consumers are receivers of the information from the firm, while consumers hear from the news that the company is doing their best in sustainability, they also go through attribution process with their persuasion knowledge, which makes much more difficult for firms to make positive impression. One of my research deal with this. For example, this is a real case from cosmetic company of Korea. The Innisfree, the firm, sold that Hello I'm paper bottle, and actually consumer found that the paper just covers plastic bottle. What about POSCO, the biggest company in Korea? While the POSCO receiving a lot of awards on sustainability, there has sexual assault in the workplace. The research finding shows that this type of one-time negative event affects consumers' genuine CSR motive hugely. So you see this genuine CSR motive level drops drastically if the company is currently doing corporate social irresponsible behavior compared to CSR behavior. If company does one-time negative event, the previous effect of their sustainability disappears because of this one-time negative event. So CSR history has positive impact on firm warmth perception, and if the firm is perceived to be warm, then people think that the company has genuine motive and it leads consumers to be attracted to the organization. But if the company is currently doing irresponsible behavior, this effect disappears. So the question is that based on this understanding, how can corporate manage sustainability? Imagine that you as a CSO, how can you manage this? Let us think about similar cases. Let's think about CEO risk. These days, CEOs are perceived as the company itself. But there are some unique activities of CEO. CEO activism refers CEO taking public stance on social, political, and environmental topics without any obvious pretense of raising profit. CEO advocacy is a positive behavior regarding non-confrontational and widely accepted issue, while CEO activism may provoke some controversies. So CEOs are highly involved in social issues. As a consumer, how you perceive these kind of CEO activities? With my research, I show that CEO morality affects firm warmth and firm's motive, and it affects corporate reputations. What about CEO morality making differences in ESG or sustainability efforts? CEO activism may be related to self-serving motive and it affects corporate reputation. But if CEO morality is bad, then it accelerates negative effect. For example, CEO is actively engaging in social issue, and he or she actively posts on SNS regarding environmental issue. However, imagine that CEO has negative moral issues in his private life or in her public life, then it accelerates negative impact and deters positive impact on corporate reputation. So what I'm saying in this research is that CEOs' practice of morality, CEOs' practice of activism, CEOs' practice of advocacy all affects corporate reputation. Not just business practices, but how CEO is perceived to be moral, how much CEO is involved in activism and advocacy, all those factors interact together to affect corporate reputation. As a CSO, you may be challenging job to manage all this, but the reason why I'm giving this diverse research findings and this diverse perspective is to help you to answer the question of how you can manage issues as a CSO. So Let's think about what happens then. Okay, so I cannot 100% manage CEO. I cannot 100% manage these negative things happen in our business practice. Then what should we do? What should CSO should do? My next research is on crisis communication after negative effect happens on sustainability. Are there any remedies? Yes, there are. There are 3 strategies in crisis communication. One is strategic silence, the other apology, the last emotional communication. Unfortunately, many companies are still doing strategic silence because of legal counsel in their crisis team. However, my research suggests that rather than strategic silence or apology, you better be emotional regarding the irresponsible behavior. Communication emotion can act as information and guide judgment and decision making. Emotionally framed crisis response lead to more positive reputation of the company. Maybe you can think about some recent issues regarding CEO apologizing and your reaction to that. If CEO is perceived to be emotional enough to show sympathy, then probably it will lead to positive outcome. So my research shows that the emotional communication accelerates positive impact and deters negative impact of negative events. So if the communication is highly emotional, you see in this green line, the perception of prior warmth has a positive impact. However, if the communication is average emotional or not emotional, then the more you perceived as a warm or good company after crisis, actually you may seen as a hypocrite. You may see as not warm. You may seen as not good company. So far, we have talked about how consumers perceive and react to the corporates. Actually, the definition of marketing explains that marketing have values for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. So the definition of marketing itself has enough consideration on society, but we many times forget that. Marketing scholar pointed out that marketing is well-known negative impacts. It encourages rapid consumption and it does not restrain the wants it encourages, and it overfulfills materialistic wants and underserves non-materialistic wants. In changing this, many marketing scholars actually pointed out that we do have wrong ethical approaches or philosophical foundation on marketing. So you see here Kant, Bentham, and Aristotle. So virtue ethics following the philosophy of Aristotle emphasizes the character and virtues of the agent. It criticized deontology, which focuses on action, and utilitarianism, which focuses on outcomes of the action, asserting that moral behavior is determined by the virtue of agents. Marketing is based on Benthamian utilitarianism. So we always emphasize outcomes of a business act. But people realize that utilitarianism is not absolute foundation. We can maybe look into more ethical perspective on marketing. For example, so far we have not questioned the assumption that more is better. But based on virtue, ethics, maybe we think that enough is enough. So what happens if we accept the virtue ethics of enough is enough? Then there will be many difference in marketing activities. For example, product, maybe we satisfy needs, not unnecessary wants. Maybe we enhance positive externalities of the product. And for price, we may include costs for environmental and social externalities. And we include extra costs for positive externalities. And we consider living wages of producers. And for place, we may stay within local and regional economies, not globalization. And for promotion, we may challenge status quo and provide alternative views. Is it even possible? Does it sound really radical? But actually, it has not. Look into the long history of business and marketing. It is only recent that we made a maximum financial profit assumption based on utilitarianism. Humankind has always involved in business. We have always made the corporates, some organizations to do run business. For example, if you do look into Adam Smith's theory of moral sentiment, or Robert Owen, or Sugar for anti-slavery, Guinness for welfare of workers, Cadbury for health, actually all this business has actively pursued sustainability to make a better society. So it's not new. Maybe there will be some recent cases, for example, Patagonia, where a billionaire founder gives a fashion firm away to fight climate changes. Okay, so far I have explained about consumer and corporates and how they interact to achieve sustainability. Briefly summarize today's lecture. I first talked about why consumer matter, and I talked about consumer voting and collective efforts of consumer and corporates. Then we look into different views on relationship between consumers. And based on both assumptions, as a CSO, there are a bunch of things you need to take into account. And concretely, I gave several research findings on, as a CSO, how you can manage sustainability issue in the response of consumers' reaction. Okay, thank you for listening. I hope it provokes you to think in different perspectives with your own unique views and apply them to your own life issues, own business issues. And I hope you come up with maybe more innovative and more practical and effective, efficient for your own problem.